Hello, and welcome to another episode of Around the Verse. I'm Sandy Gardner.
And I'm Chris Roberts.
This week, Jared's back with an installment of Shipshape on the Vanduul Blade.
Yes, and we'll see what's in store for the immediate future of shopping kiosks. I know you all want to know. But first, let's go once again to Ricky Jutley for this week's Star Citizen project update.
Yes, let's take a look at where we are on the roadmap and what the devs have been up to.
Thanks, guys. Let's get things started and take a look at the roadmap. More progress has been made on the mining mechanic. Laser rock highlights are in and working, but the VFX are just placeholders and will be replaced once new tech is complete. Right now we have 3 levels of breakage for rocks, with a 4th still to be added, and we're still tinkering with the physics to get them just right. Rock destruction VFX work is also ongoing, with work being done on specific states like in progress mining, safe mining, and incorrect, dangerous mining. Again, the visuals here will be replaced with new tech once it's available, so the beam you're seeing isn't the finished article. Implementing feedback from Chris Roberts, we've been adjusting the way the tractor beam looks and acts, as well as making further tweaks to the scanning and mining UIs, which will be finalised once the Prospector's boom arm is complete. It has been determined that your weapons will be offline while in mining mode due to the power allocation, and we're still working on the button interaction and key bindings that will switch and control the modes. Test cases are being implemented to help various teams get FPS AI working in the PU. In this example, you see the AI running on a server with an outpost being used as the test level. As you can see, the AI don't behave as expected due to many factors which do not become apparent until they are placed in real-world scenarios, such as running over a network or being within the zone of a rotating planet. These levels highlight issues like this and provide teams a testbed to work more rapidly on fixes. Early VFX work has been done on the death masks for several ships. Here you see first damage pass effects for the Aegis Avenger rework. And damage effects are being worked on for several other ships, including the Anvil Hurricane. That's some pretty cool explosions. This team has also been working on ballistic weapon VFX improvements, including a more natural muzzle flash and less intrusive tracers, as seen here with submachine guns. And sound design is being worked on for some of the FPS guns planned for Alpha 3.2, like the Gemini 55. And the Scalpel sniper rifle. Environmental work continues on the hangars that you'll be seeing in various space stations, with more areas in the grey box design phase, such as the drone bays seen here. We've also been adding thematic panels to add visual interest and open up opportunities for interesting AI interactions and narrative choices in these locations. Finally, door animations have been blocked in, which also add some nice dramatic touches. Work continues on the planet Hurston, with its multiple biomes being visually developed and tested, and its landing zone Lorville really starting to come together. Here we see visual work on an acidic biome. The asset tinting applied here, as seen in last week's update, really helps this biome, allowing less assets to do more, and the distribution of rocks continues to be improved. Also, some visual tweaks are being made to the sulfur pools that dominate this environment. And here are some work in progress renderings of a savanna biome, with trees and lighting getting some attention. This area is also being used as a testing ground for wind and detail bending. You can see the visual and geographic diversity that's being developed for Hurston and its moons beginning to take shape. Finally, we get more glimpses of the Hurston trash biome. If any of the sets really represent the environmentally compromised planet, it's definitely the trash biome. As Lorville's visual development continues, the environment art team is putting together these prototypes for artistic direction, mood, and to show what VFX will be needed. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time for more PU progress. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Ricky. So we'll have more PU updates in the coming weeks, and you can always follow along with the roadmap week to week on the RSI website.
One of the features set for Alpha 3.2 that we've been tracking on the roadmap these last few weeks is Item Kiosk Shopping.
Yes, as you've seen in previous project updates, the functionality, UI, and visual presentation of the kiosk continues to evolve. Let's see where the teams are on this system, which will open up the ability to purchase a lot more items than we have room for in some of our stores. What's planned for 3.2's release and beyond in this week's feature.
So right now we're working on a shopping kiosk, and what that's going to be is that's an in-world screen that the player can walk up to in any shopping location and actually purchase items from that shop.
For the item kiosk work, we actually took some inspiration from the VMA and the PMA. We started adding those systems in terms of like displaying items, displaying the ship items, and giving the option to select the items that we wish to research. We took, of course, some notes from the commodity kiosk system that we currently have, and adding those two systems to one step actually showing the character loadout and also the vehicle loadout, and presenting with items that we have available in that store for that particular, let's say, cooler or engine or missile that we want to browse.
By time we finish the implementation, it's not going to look like the PMA or the VMA on the Mobiglass. It'll obviously have a complete reskin. There'll be additional flow.
When trying to explain how the VMA and the PMA actually work is that we have a request. The user makes a request. We go into our what we call persistency. We make a request for, let's say, player number 1 requests the items that he has on his vehicle number 1. And the server will return to us a bunch of items that belong to that vehicle, to that character. And we then, with those items, well, we basically need to transform the data and make it presentable for the user in a really nice way. How this applies to the item kiosk is, let's say a player goes into a store. He has his Gladius pre-selected. He goes into the store and he wants to see which items apply to his Gladius. Let's say he picks a cooler. Player will need to request to persistency, I want to see every cooler that works on my Gladius for this ship. And the server will return to us all of the items, and then we have the data that we can then present to the player in a nice way in the item kiosk shop. We already have a kind of dynamic platform that we can use to create loadouts. May they be for, let's say, a character, or it be a ship or a ground vehicle or something like that. We can reuse these systems to actually load in, let's say, items that we have available in a store. So going through that steps of following some systems that we already have in place would be the easiest step to actually getting a new system up.
So essentially, the user interface is an extension of the personal manager and vehicle manager, where their navigation scheme is largely the same. However, there's some key differences that we need to take into account for the shop. So, for instance, displaying price, factoring stats and the comparison functionality, as well as the flow for just purchasing in general and selling. So, in terms of the actual skinning of the UI, we've worked on a branding system where this kiosk can basically be in multiple different shops, and what we want to have is the actual branding being reflected on the kiosk, but in the way that it's scalable for us. So if there's 20, 30 shops, 50 different shops, 100 different shops, we can just slot in different branding and styles that will make a big impact on the experience.
We are trying a new kind of presentation for these item kiosk shops. The user will go to the item kiosk, he will pre-select, like, I want to buy items. He will have, for example, his ship loaded in automatically. He will then get to pick the item port that he wants to actually make a purchase for, let's say a cooler. He will then see the one he has equipped on that vehicle, and then he will see a list of items that are available on the store. Every time he clicks an item on the store, he will get to see like statistics for that item, how that item compares to the one he has equipped, and also the availability to buy that item, to actually buy it and equip it to the ship, or to actually just buy it and store it somewhere and do whatever he wants to do with it.
The first thing you'll do on a shopping kiosk is you'll choose whether you want to buy something or whether you want to sell something, because the sell functionality is going to be important for us going forward as well.
The player could actually go to a store, let's say he finds a sweet deal on, let's say, a couple of missiles, and he says like, okay, I have this couple of missiles, but I don't want to equip them right now in my ship. Okay, let me just store them somewhere in what we call the global inventory, and let me just keep it there for a couple of like days or so until I actually need that.
The shopping kiosk is obviously important for immersion and allowing the player to access some of the things that are currently outside of the game, in the game, sort of in fiction. But it's also important for, as one of the big first steps for the economy. Certain shops in certain locations are going to sell items that potentially are made from materials that are local. So this is going to tie into the mining system and everything. So a particular weapon is made from a particular metal that is mineable locally. So that's going to be kind of in abundance at this location. But it also, it might mean that they're cheap there, but it also means that maybe you can't get them elsewhere where that material isn't mineable. And then obviously the knock-ons there are, if I go and buy some stuff from there, I could potentially sell it where it's rare. You know, the kind of economy side of things really kicks off when we start to look at supply and demand of things like that to that level.
So where we're at right now is we've had our initial sign-off on the general flow and the functionality that we mocked up in our prototype. So it may not be perfect off the bat, but it helps us to, as artists and as engineers, to visualize what are the exact requirements, how is this thing supposed to work, and how does it flow.
It's all about kind of giving players options. It's speeding up gameplay effectively. It means that they don't have to spend forever looking through different menus. And it also really kind of helps the new players. So someone new to the game might not know that they have to physically buy something, go into a different app in the mobile glass, equip it that way. With this item kiosk, they know, I bought this thing, I'm equipping it to this spot, and it's done. And it's all simple and easy for them to use.
So at this release, we'll have our first iteration of the item shop kiosk, and it will be reflective of our prototyping, our art and implementation, but it'll be the first pass.
So right now we're at the step where you can now purchase items and it goes into your global inventory. We've also got the system working so you can select an item port and it shows relevant stuff to buy. Next up for us is to get shop items and what you own side by side in a list. So that way you can see, this is what I own, this is what I will be replacing, and this is what my options are.
In terms of future development, we will take a look at the feedback that comes through from the player base testing the UI and our internal usability testing as well. So future development will have future iterations. You know, there will be things that we'll want to adjust and tweak in terms in order to optimize the flow and the experience in general. So there are things that we can't really foresee now, and most of the time that is the case. But we've gone as far as we can in the time that we've had allotted, and we have a solution that we think will work well. But it really comes down to how is the player ultimately going to experience this?
Where we're currently at is probably the most exciting part is we have base functionality already working. So a person can go into a shop, can actually see the items, can actually buy them and stay with them. So it already makes the call to persistency. The fun part now comes where we are starting to reskin the item kiosks. So instead of having that kind of look and feel of the VMA and PMA, they're going to have their distinct feel of like, okay, this is an item kiosk. It's going to have like theming in terms of stores. It's going to have a slightly different layout than the VMA, than the PMA. It's going to be familiar enough that players know how to use it, but it's going to be a little bit different, not to just reuse assets. It's going to be unique, so to speak.
Thanks, guys. With Alpha 3.2 not far away, we'll see further improvements to the shopping kiosks in upcoming project updates.
Yes, it's always a work in progress, so to speak. We have a whole bunch of stuff that we need to do. So 3.2 is going to have the basics, but we'll continue to improve in 3.3 and onwards, because shopping kiosk will be one way that will be able to allow you to purchase a lot of items that we may not always have shop space, floor space for. So it'll always be a combination. So the 3.2 will be the first time you'll have a kiosk that you can actually buy sort of larger items than we let you buy in most of the shops now. But it's a lot of work. Also due out with 3.2 is the Vanduul Blade. Let's go to Jared Huckabee for another installment of Shipshape, taking a look at this menacing fighter.
Greetings, citizens, and welcome to an all-new edition of Shipshape, where we take a look at what's making its way down the ship pipeline towards release into the Star Citizen universe. I'm your host, content manager, Jared Huckabee. Now, you might be asking yourself, hey, I thought Shipshape was a monthly thing. Well, it was, but as with many things, the only constant in video game development is change. So we're going to be trying something new here over the next couple episodes with a shorter, more refined bi-weekly format. So what does that mean for you guys? Well, it means you'll still get the same Shipshape content that you would have gotten throughout the remainder of 2018. We're just going to chop them up into smaller, more digestible portions so you don't have to wait as long between updates. I know, you want ships. I got shapes. It's not my best metaphor. On today's edition of Shipshape, we'll be sitting down with some of the team members in our Winslow, United Kingdom studio who have been working to bring the sleek Vanduul Blade to life. Let's get started by taking a look.
The Blade is a small single-seat fighter. It's kind of like the Scythe, but smaller. Whereas the Scythe has a couple of size 5 guns, the Blade actually has 4 size 2 guns instead. It's just a little bit smaller, a little bit more easily destroyed, but at the same time it's still got a vicious punch that you'd expect from the Vanduul. Essentially it's the Vanduul equivalent of the Gladius.
Yeah, so the Vanduul Blade is a very agile single-seat fighter with 4 weapon mounts of size 2 guns, gun turrets, and 8 size 1 missiles on top. It's a multi-purpose fighter really is. It's just one of the smaller Vanduul ships that are supposed to be coming out of the bigger ships, gets deployed by the King ship. And the idea behind the Blade's landing mechanism is that the wings fold in towards the cockpit, and then there's a panel that pops off underneath the wing itself on both sides, and then acts as the landing gear. And in the back there's the ribs, which just fold out and reveal the main landing gear in the back, which just acts as a counterbalance to the rest of it, as otherwise it just tip over. The Blade art-wise is very curvy, similar to the other Vanduul ships. There's curves sweeping in and out of each other with lots of animated elements and some biomechanical influences, like from H.R. Geiger.
It's as fast and aggressive as Vanduul ships tend to be. It's also got a fairly interesting profile where it's almost shaped like the Batwing. It's got like this little sort of U-shaped curve to it. Basically, it's just a fast, aggressive ship. It's not particularly durable, but, you know, it's a bad guy ship. You're supposed to blow it up.
Some of the organic elements, it glows, it pulses continuously throughout the ship to give it a lot more life. And then there's some animated ribs that open up to reveal the landing gear.
I don't want to call the profile sinister, but definitely it's nothing that humans particularly designed their ships for. In addition to this, it's got the sort of accoutrements you'd expect from the Vanduul. It's got like little spiked blades on the front of its wings. It's got some spikes along the back of the wings where they're like vents just poking out the back, 4 little spikes coming out of it. It's a spiky, evil, sinister looking ship with red glowing lights all over it. I mean, very clearly you look at it, you're like, that's a bad guy ship.
The interior of a blade is very organic and feel similar to the exterior. Same kind of basic curves going everywhere. It's a bit more intricate as it's an interior, so it needs to be. The dashboard is completely hologram based, except for the joysticks to steer the ship. Everything else is just holographic, which gives it a bit of a distinct look from the rest of the ships for sure. Some other ships that are similar in with lots of holographic. I think the Vanduul style pushes that a bit further.
One of the main things is how you get into the ship. With the Vanduul ships, you have the seat, which is kind of on a runner, and the hatch will pop down and the seat will slide down to you, and you grab onto the seat and it'll pop back up again, taking you with it. The Blade has exactly the same thing, where even though the ship's smaller, we're trying to keep it to the same metrics, so it'll come down, you'll get into it, you'll be able to go up, and you'll sort of rest on this seat rather than sitting down in a seat in the ship. In addition to that, the cockpit area is, I don't want to call it Spartan, but I'm going to call it Spartan. It's not got loads of screens in there like you'd see with a lot of other ships. The Vanduul kind of have like little hollow projectors which display your information for you, and it's not cluttered up with lots of screen stuff. It's cluttered up with evil bad guy stuff, so you know there's evil vents and pipes and stuff everywhere, but you know that's fine. It's also got a similar flowing organic feel to the structure between the glass panels, so rather than having like hard angles, it's all smooth curves going around you, which again fits in with that Vanduul design philosophy.
We did follow the lore of Vanduul quite closely, and we actually developed some new ideas while working on it. How do they actually make their technology? Where does it come from? How does it run? How is it put together? That's quite an interesting way of looking at Vanduul, I think. Trying to move away from portraying them as those mindless, just warrior-like, frenzied creatures, and then put some intelligence and some interesting aspects of their culture that make them maybe a little bit more, well, I wouldn't say sophisticated, but definitely not mindless, and quite intelligent and purposeful in what they want to achieve. They are scavengers. They don't create their technology. They absorb other races' technology and do what they want with it. So they are really, really capable in understanding how stuff works and making stuff work for them by modifying it and combining stuff together. Obviously, they are not like the visual aspects of their stuff. They don't care about that stuff. That's way they don't have art. They don't have pop culture or anything like that. They're just out there to basically conquer and absorb and assimilate and then just be stronger. That's why their weapons, they don't necessarily have a consistent style per se. As you can very often see some other races and some other technologies inside. For example, see a weapon that has a laser emitter that's clearly based on Banu technology. You can see completely different lines, completely different style than to what would call Vanduul style. You can see some human stuff in there because, for example, there was a battery or a generator that they really, they looked at it. They reverse engineered it and connected it to some other stuff, and it works. And if it works, that's all they're happy about. Everything is put together using some sort of biomechanical. What I call it paste, but this is like all the resources that they scraped and refined from the planets they conquered. They use those ships called harvesters. They just set them down and they just basically take everything and then they refine it and they create like I don't think it's silicon. I don't know. We actually really know what it is, but it's very, very strong and it has this kind of biological look to it. And they basically put whatever the weapon they wanted. They put it together and then they stick everything with like almost like an outer framing, so it doesn't fall apart. So that's like the equivalent of our, I would say, welding. So all their kind of weapons and a lot of their tech is surrounded by this biological mesh or biological like a structure or a framing around. So basically it's sturdy and it sticks together and you can actually use it. When I was talking to Dave Haddock, our director of narrative, about it, because when we create stuff, I don't personally like to create stuff in vacuum. I like to have explanation for everything. Something that came up, which I really liked, is this idea of Vanduul. They don't build outwards like humans would. So human is gonna get a component and then attach another component on top of it and then another component, and it's kind of growing outwards. What Vanduul like to do is they create a shell, a volume, and they put stuff inside of it. So they're almost building inwards. That's why on an interiors you can see a lot of weird pillars coming in and holding stuff together in the middle, and then they kind of work like that. As people have seen, the Vanduul changed quite drastically in looks. We had this very noisy, very grungy, almost a scrapyard look to them initially, and that's how the first wave of the concept art and a lot of the models was created a few years ago. There wasn't necessarily anything very wrong with it, other than it was incredibly inefficient and incredibly expensive to run. We wanted to have massive fleets, and that's our goal, to be able to run a lot of those ships at the same time, almost in like a swarm-like formations. So we had to really cut down on polygons. And that when Matt and Colin, a couple of years ago, they created a Vanduul Driller, the big carrier of the Vanduul fleet, in a new style with much more kind of organic and smooth curves. We followed that with other ships, and we had to kind of pretty much rebuild all the other ship according to that. And that also affected weapons. You can see the old style of Vanduul weapons on some of the ships that are currently in PU and you can currently fly, like Scythe and Glaive.
Try to balance all the smooth curves with the more spiky, aggressive shapes. There was also the issue of scale, where there isn't really that much you can use to get the scale reference for it. There is the cockpit, of course, with the glass windows, but other than that, there is not much you can really gauge the scale by.
One of the things with the redesign was at one point there was some experimentation with getting like a rear room where you could get out the seat and walk around the back of it. But at that point the ship started getting a bit too big. It was starting to approach the size of the Scythe. And obviously being a light fighter, that was making it too big. So that got scrapped and it got scaled back down again a little bit. Essentially the ship, the core of the ship has stayed the same throughout all the different iterations.
The Blade is one of the last ships we've made. It has a lot of the ideas. What we want to do now is we want to kind of go back again from Blade to Driller to get all those ideas and then expand them over the whole fleet again, and just to add a few more things. Blade has a little bit of that. We want to create a few more like common Vanduul visual elements and maybe add to it a little bit later and then add to other ships, but it's probably the closest ship right now to what we actually want Vanduul to look like. But it might change a little bit visually in the future, obviously, like anything else is bound to change. We reserve right to change this stuff. It's definitely not final. We'll see what works. It's a very iterative process, especially when you're working on the whole fleet almost at the same time, which is kind of what I'm tasked to do.
As a bit of a light fighter, I mean, it's going to go in fast, it's going to fire a lot of guns, it's going to harry smaller targets. You might use multiple of them in conjunction if you've got like a bigger ship to try and pepper it and take it down, so something else can come in and strike the killing blow on larger targets. It'll be your general purpose dog's body for a fleet. It'll fight whatever you want it to, and it'll generally give them a bit of a bad time.
Now, I heard it. A few of you scoffed at the line, "It's like a Vanduul version of the Gladius" remark. But let me tell you, a while back when we were doing those electronic access invitationals here across the studios, my boy Vinny Sinatra in the QA department was mowing through the rest of us so quickly he didn't even bother to take the names. And what ship was he flying? The Gladius. Now that's one of the most exciting aspects of Star Citizen's continuing development, that finding of an effective mix between pilot and ship. Ships like the Gladius and the Blade can seem underwhelming at times to folks like me who need every single advantage they can get on the battlefield in order to not, embarrass themselves. But for those at the top of their game, and for anyone that values speed or maneuverability over raw firepower, ships like these two often end up being just as devastating as any other. The Vanduul Blade is scheduled to enter the persistent universe in the upcoming Alpha 3.2. Now also coming in that very same Alpha 3.2, let's do a quick update on 2 ships currently making their way through the pipeline. First, the Aegis Avenger rework. In progress now, it continues its development with EMP tweaks, work on the cargo room LODs, and this look at the work being done on the Avenger Renegade livery. While the team working to bring the stylish Origin 600i to life are making progress with the captain's quarters, as well as a lighting pass to what's being referred to internally as the hub area. Now, still with plenty of work left to do on both these ships, it's exciting to see them moving closer than ever before to their intended release into the Star Citizen universe with next month's Alpha 3.2 content patch. And that, my friends, is what we have for you this episode, but don't worry, because I'm going to be back once again at the end of this month with updates on even more Star Citizen ships, more Star Citizen spaceship stuff, and more, well, everything that will make Star Citizen the best damn space sim ever. For ShipShape, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody.
Thanks, Jared. Always fun to get a look at alien ships.
Yes, it definitely is. And as our designers have really locked in on the style of the Vanduul, their ships are becoming very distinct and very threatening and cool looking.
Threatening. For more, Jared, tune into Reverse to Verse live tomorrow at 9 a.m. PDT. And if you missed it on Monday, check out Calling All Devs for more Q&A.
Yes, because that also has Jared on it. And you can never have enough Jared.
Yep,
Anyway,
okay.
so big thanks to all our subscribers for sponsoring the shows, giving us this platform to share the development process with all of you.
Tickets to CitizenCon are still available, and we couldn't be more excited to share the development process with you in person with a full day of developer presentations and interactions.
Yeah, well, after last year being successful, we're going to expand the format, and there's going to be bigger and cooler than before, like basically the UK ship department and all the ships they ever do. And it's going to be at the Long Center in Austin, Texas, which is also a very cool venue. So we have a lot of fun in store, and can't wait to see, hopefully, a bunch of you there in October.
For our latest concept ship, the Hercules Starlifter from Crusader Industries, we have a short story contest running to give all you aspiring lore makers out there a chance to craft your own Hercules adventure and win one for your fleet.
But you can't say that too fast.
I know, seriously.
It's going to be fun to see all the creative uses the community comes up for the ship. It was always fun seeing what people could do with, say, a Cutlass on 3.0. So imagine what it is on a ship as big as the Hercules. And also, thanks to everyone who participated in our Intel screenshot contest these last few weeks. Congratulations to winner Hasagar, Narayan N7, and Captain Raul, who all took home their own Intel Optane solid-state drives by capturing and showing some spectacular in-game shots. And I have to say, outside of the 3 winners, there's some amazing shots in the whole screenshot contest. Every one of the series, I think there was 3 rounds, had, I mean, it was really hard for me personally to pick, and I think a lot of the people here at CIG felt exactly the same way. So I would say people that haven't gone to the screenshot
Check it out
contest,
on Spectrum.
Check it out on Spectrum, because the in-game photography that people are doing is amazing.
And that's all for this week. Thank you to all of our backers for making this possible. Until next time, we will see you around the verse.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.